welcome to my channel where I sometimes talk about books. This episode I wanted to talk about House of Leaves by Mark Z. Danielewski. This book I started actually a couple months ago. I'm reading it with my boyfriend. I'm almost done with the book. I'm on chapter 16 right now. And so I think I usually do this thing where I kind of give my basic opinions on a book right before I'm about to finish it, and then after I finish it, I decide if I will watch what I said about it, and then if I have anything more to add, I'll add it. So that's what I'm doing for this book. Basically, this book, we decided that we wanted to read it because we found this video, which maybe I'll show, which is basically a video game version of the book. In short summary, that's what it is. And because the video game plays a lot with liminal spaces and weird space things, it was interesting to see that through the lens of the someone who's playing a game, and then the inspiration that they took from was House of Leaves. So we just found it interesting, and we wanted to start that. So we got our hands on it, and then we've been reading it for the most part together. We read some things separately, but I think that's also why it's probably taken me so long to read it, is because trying to read it with another person and then schedules sometimes just don't align. So my basic opinions on the book, I was reading it, and immediately, as soon as the first few annotations happened, I was oh, it's giving Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace. And I kept thinking about Infinite Jest as I was reading it, just because there were so many parallels between how the books are written and how you have to physically look to flip to the back of the book to actually read it, and it just does these interesting things with the way that it's written, and I just found that really interesting, and I kept saying that to my boyfriend, and he was okay, he hadn't read it Infinite Jest, so he didn't really know where I was coming from with that. So yeah, and so I was is this just a thing that happens with postmodern literature, that it becomes I don't know. I just think that the way that it was written seemed to be very heavily influenced by Infinite Jest. Infinite Jest was written 4 years prior to this novel, so it could possibly be correlated with that. I'm sure that he himself took some inspiration from this book that got a lot of attention when it was published, and it was seen as the postmodern novel. So it makes sense that if this guy was doing something in that similar postmodern mentality, it would be also taking influences from I don't even know what term to call it other than the technicality of the bookishness of Infinite Jest, where it uses a bunch of annotations and endnotes, and constantly cross-references itself. I do think House of Leaves is a lot more difficult in certain ways to read, and I think that is because that's part of the author's intention with his book. It was to create something that was due to the plot of the novel, the reading the Novitzin record, was going to be uncovered by the person, Johnny Truant, who's reading the Novitzin record, and then also us as the audience reading his interpretation of what's going on in the Novitzin record. There's a section where an entire, I think 40 pages were lost of the Novitzin record because of Johnny Truant spilling ink all over those pages. So I just found that it does add a level of obscurity to the book. It gives it definitely a mysterious vibe and makes it more interesting to read. So my critiques of the book is mostly that, like, I can't see a strong message with the book. It seems to be pointing at a lot of different sort of convoluted threads, like little thematic notes throughout it, including, and I haven't, and to preface everything that I'm about to say, I haven't looked at any people's interpretations of this book yet. I haven't looked at, like, any reviews or, like, anyone that has said anything about this book so far. So, once I finish this book and once I, maybe look into what people would say that the book is about, I will have, like, a different opinion. But right now, I find it hard to, like, if someone was to ask me what this book was about, I'm not sure that I could give them a real answer. It seems to be going in different directions with what it's trying to thematically say. Like, what is the house an analogy for? Truly, like, I get that not every book needs to have a perfect, like, oh, the house represents depression, the house represents anxiety or addiction. I get that that may not always be, like, the correct thing to say, or not every work of art needs to be as cut and dry as that to be good art. And of course, this is just my opinion, but it doesn't have a strong overarching theme. And maybe it doesn't have to, but in my reading of it, at some points it feels like there is no point to what I'm reading. Again, like, everyone has their own, like, differing opinions with the art that they consume. For me, I think sometimes I don't care so much about a overly complex plot when it comes to art, like books or movies or something like that. I don't really care about a plot so much as the societal relevance, the cultural context, like what it's trying to say about society. Like, that matters more to me, and, like, I will always view everything that I consume from more so that perspective than the actual events that are occurring. So while it is a really interesting story and I am enjoying seeing, and I want to see genuinely, like, where all their characters end up, it does give, like, pretty much spoils a lot of stuff, like, pretty early on in the book about where each character is heading and, like, where their paths are going to end up. There's still a lot of plot that is not given away, like the whole scene with Jed and Holloway and Wax. That was completely out of left field, and it was, beautiful to see that abstract literature. So I guess here's, like, for me, it was a very interesting way to convey a plot. The art of the book, the way that some of the pages are like blocked off, and like actually reading it, like the act of reading it, and this is some of my favorite parts are these parts, like where they're talking about being in the house, and like the actual text reflects what it's like to be in the house. That was very moving to read, and it was very, you know, like, it's one of those moments where you take a step back and you're like, art is like such a beautiful thing because it can make me feel something, and make me feel like I'm truly in the house and like experiencing these things for the first time, in a way that I would never, like, in any other type of medium. Like, it wouldn't, this would not translate like to a movie screen. This wouldn't translate to an audiobook necessarily. This is purely a book format. Of course there are ways to translate that, but like in the form that I was in taking this information, I was truly enthralled, and had a lot of appreciation for the abstractness, and like someone having the passion, not the passion, just a lot of respect for him as an artist to create something like this, to be avant-garde, but like still make it accessible. I didn't feel like I was struggling to understand what was going on. I didn't feel like I was out of my depth at any points, like as to what was happening. So I did appreciate that. The art of it, I think, is very beautiful, and like if you're a person that wants to read something that's unusual, that takes like a different approach to a story, this is a really good book to pick up. And so, yeah. But for the actual plot of what is happening, I still cannot say what I think the book is trying to say about humanity and the human condition. And like, it's corny to say, but like at the end of the day, I think that's what it comes back to. So while I have respect for the aesthetics of it, I don't know if I align so strongly with what he's trying to say, just because I can't really get at a specific overarching message, and maybe as I keep reading I'll figure it out, but as of right now I'm like pretty much like up to the reader's interpretation of what they could gather from all of these different pearl outlines, like Johnny Truant's insane past, his whole mother storyline, his whole mother's life and the way that it's affected him, and like dealing with mental illness and schizophrenia, but then also in the Navidson record, like Zampano's writing the Navidson record and, going insane, or like going through all of these hurdles to gather all of this information. To what end? I have no idea. Why did you include all of these annotations? That make no sense. Or is it truly just because you wanted to annotate something? I don't know. And so like that is where it kind of falls apart for me. Just like I can't, like, if it was perhaps, I understand Johnny Truant's storyline and like perhaps where it can align with Navidson's wife Karen's storyline, where she also has mental illness, and like Navidson also needs to struggle to be, to have self-worth. So there's a lot of different themes that are going on. I have no idea how they coincide. So Navidson wants to be famous and values fame over his family and over keeping Karen happy and being in a stable relationship. Okay. Karen is deeply paranoid about them, him exploring the house, and like sets a boundary with that, which is obviously ignored. Um, and has a deep problem with claustrophobia and agoraphobia in general. Johnny Truant's going absolutely insane. Drug usage, and also just schizophrenia. His mother's schizophrenic writings, his mother's schizophrenic letters to him. I mean, it's deep. It's deep in the sense that there are levels to what is happening. There's so much to look at. The lore goes really deep, I'm sure, and like once I figure out what the hell Zampano and like the people that were annotating this book were doing, I might be able to say something to that. But as for an overarching message, I didn't gather that throughout the book. But there was a lot of moments that I did find really touching. So there's that. There's like Navidson's brother's sacrifice. There's them fighting to rescue or recover Wax's body. There's Holloway going completely insane in the house. The house itself is really interesting. Why is there seemingly a growl and like a creature in the house, in the space? And then, why is the house 1 billion years old, like older than the earth? And, all of these different things. Right now, I guess the my theory, or like my boyfriend's theory, was that the house is from a different dimension, and that's why the samples that they took from there are like older than the earth. Which I could see, but also like what does this have to do with literally anything that we're seeing? But maybe like the house's mystery and the house's essence is reverberated throughout life itself. Like, people's feelings of being farther away will create a deeper tunnel in the house, or like people's fear of the house will like manifest in some way, or people's feelings about the house will manifest in some way, and therefore like that's why it's in a different dimension, and like through being in a different dimension it's like reflecting people's psychology. So that's really interesting, but like I don't know that it's strong enough of a like core point to actually hold up. I'm really curious to see how this book ends, because ultimately I did really enjoy this book. I would give it a 4 out of 5, but the overarching message I just didn't gather.